Barry, first of all, thanks for doing this. Thanks for hosting us. How long have you been thinking about this move? We've always thought Barry Trotz, coach lifer. How long have you been thinking about this move to management?
Not really that long, really. I think what it came down to, I've coached for 25 years. And I thought, you know what, I'm going back to Nashville. Nashville's my home. And I thought, it'd be really neat to get involved with the Preds. I've always had a Pred stamp when you work for someone and make this place your home. I was here for 17 years. I thought it'd be nice to go full circle and get involved with the Preds. I had a summer where I had a lot of family stuff. I was very transparent to everybody that I needed to get family stuff done. And then I'll decide what I'm going to do after that. And early December, I had a couple teams inquire about what I was doing, and actually, talking to me about joining their clubs and maybe making some changes. And I think they reached out to David and to check me out, I think. And David, then called, I think, Lou and said, hey, I'd like to talk to Barry about potentially something that I'm thinking of doing. And that was, retiring after the end of the year and see if he would be involved. So that got thrown on my plate. There was probably a 48-hour period where I had a couple teams talking to me, and then this thrown on my plate. Very shortly after I had just sort of finished everything that I had to do during the summer. And, I went for counsel with my wife as usual. She's anybody who has in this business, you have a counsel, and that counsel is my wife. And she said, you know what, you got everything done. Yeah, you do need a little bit of a break, but at the same time, you have to make a quick decision. But if you want to continue coaching, I think there might be a space maybe next year for you if you want to do that. At the same time, if you want to explore this, why not take that time to explore this? And so that probably gave me a little bit of a pause, if you will. And I said, you know what, I maybe explore this a little bit. And when I said I wanted to maybe get involved with the team, I didn't think I was going to be maybe necessarily at this level. But when I thought about it more, I thought, what a great challenge. I've coached for a long time. I've invested into Nashville, not only the Preds, but the community. So from my standpoint, I looked at it as a great opportunity for me to maybe put my final stamp on Nashville franchise and come full circle. And I thought it was really neat. So, I started with David, in 97, even before that. And I thought, David's given me a lot in this game, and, he's given me this opportunity. If, ownership and management and all that thinks that I can get it done, then I'd like to go for that challenge. And so we met with ownership, all that, and finally came to an agreement. And I'm really excited. I'm very thankful for the Preds for allowing me to transition with David. Usually general managers, they get fired and then the new general manager comes in. The great thing about this is I get to pick a Hall of Famer's brain of 40 some years of being a general manager, and not only a friend, but a general manager. And I thought it was a no-brainer.
Boy, there's a lot of follow-ups here. There's a lot of places I want to go, but I want to start kind of at the beginning. So we're doing this a morning after you and David both were part of the NHL Awards. Big ovation for David. Big cheer for you. Like we all heard the Barry chants. I said at the beginning of the show, but I remember when I heard the NHL was going to Nashville, I was like, what are we doing here? Like what? And now I can't imagine the NHL without it. So I want to take you back with the first time you really came here, and what, like, there must be a story you look back at and laugh and say, "Oh my God, I'm not sure this is going to work."
Yeah, I came obviously in '97. I was like Buck Showalter. I was the coach, but I was a glorified coach, but I was really a pro scout. And but it was a great opportunity because I remember talking to David. David got the job in Nashville, and he talked to, I think, George McPhee, and says, "Hey, I'm going to talk to Barry about maybe joining us." And I was the minor league coach in Washington's organization, and had great success in Portland. And I said, what a good opportunity. So David reached out to me and says, I'd like you to join the organization. And I was thinking, great, I'm going to be the minor league coach in the new team, and keep growing as a coach. And then he says, no, to coach the team, the Predators. And I'm like, as David, those are usually jobs for very, very senior, experienced coaches, because you're not probably getting. It's not like expansion back then wasn't expansion like it is now, where you get, some top 6, top 9 players. Back then, we were getting, with the expansion rules, I met most of our players that played on that team. I had the opportunity to coach Andrew Burnett in the minors, but he wasn't really on the Washington Capitals, and we took him from Washington. Scott Walker, who was a really good player for us and is now a really good coach. But Scott, I met him. I never saw him play in the NHL live in a game. I remember him from coaching against him when he played for Syracuse. And he was going after Killer Kaminsky. And I was like, man, who's this guy? I love this kid, whoever he is. But I met him in the press box. Most of our guys that I met that year were in the press box. They weren't playing. They were the extra guys. And so I got to go through that whole process of, going from city to city as a, looking for ideas and all that. But I remember getting the job, and it was a real neat story. I got the job, and so, there's no one at my press conference. There's two friends of mine that are songwriters for Garth Brooks, and they were fencing, so they were all dirty and full of dirt and all that, because they heard the press conference. There was just reporters and just our families. And I remember, everybody's looking back, and so I'm the new coach of the expansion team, and I go back and do the pressers, and then you have a few hours, and I went and looked for a house and bought a house in like 3 hours, put an offer in, came back, and you know how hot and steamy it is, and it was August, I think it was August 7th, and I'm going back, and I'm going to meet Craig Leopold at a restaurant and David Poyle, but I'm all sweaty, so I jump in the shower, and I turn on the TV, and I'm getting ready and trying to catch up on some news, and lo and behold, the Garth Brooks Central Park concert is going on, and I had met Garth in Portland and in the songwriters and that, and the true story. So I'm getting dressed. My phone goes off. I'm watching Garth Brooks. He's leaving. He's on a helicopter flying into Central Park, and my phone goes off, and he goes. I go, hello, and he goes, yeah, Barry. Hey, congratulations. And I said, who's this? And he says, Garth. And I said, Garth who? And he goes, Garth Brooks, you down, and I'm watching him on TV as he's landing in Central Park, and he says, hey, I gotta go, and I said, yeah, you do, and I got he must have hung up the phone and
walked right out and did the concert.
And did the concert.
That's awesome.
So I always remember that that's something special that he's probably had more important things than that, but he remembered to just congratulate me. Yeah, so that was really neat. And then I remember getting my first day at work. I'm thinking, I'm in the NHL now and all that. This whole space was just a giant room, and with those sliding, fake walls, and there's a phone, there's a cable all the way down the phone with a, push button phone, and basically a cart table with a chair in this giant room. And I said, I finally made it, so those type of things. So when you think about Nashville back then, I mean, we struggled. We really did. It was we had to do it from the ground up. There was one rink here at Centennial, and this was football country. This was UT country, and we had to build it one fan at a time, doing the one-on-ones, and people like Terry Crisp and Paul Gardner and myself, we would go out daily to do Hockey 101 clinics because people had no idea what hockey was. But once they came in the first year, the first game, they stood the whole game. It was like they were at a football game. And we were, you talk about a bunch of misfits. We were the true misfits back then, because one thing that I learned really quickly is all the players that we had were those extra players. They were the 13th forward, the 7th defenseman. And so anytime that I got hard on them, at times they would go into a tizzy because they thought they didn't have the confidence. They're getting scratched. And so I figured that out real quickly, that they needed to be boosted. They needed to be propped up. They needed to be told how good they are. And then, you look at a guy like Scott Walker, who was the wild thing in Vancouver, playing fourth line, being scratched, all that. All of a sudden, he's playing on my second line, and he's getting 20 goals a year, and being an abrasive type player and a really good player. So we learned a lot of those lessons. Andrew Burnett scored our first goal in franchise history, and so we had a lot of those misfits that would be the original ones, I think, because we didn't have much of a payroll. We didn't have much talent. I remember lining up against Colorado. I think it was Game 3 here, and I remember the starting lineup for me. I had Mike Dunham in goal. I had Bob Bugner and Joel Bouchard were my number one pair. I had Sergei Krivokrasov, Andrew Burnett, and Greg Johnson were my starting lineup, and they lined up with Sakic, Forsberg, and Deadmarsh with Blake, Bourque, and Patrick Waugh.
Was that?
And I said, we're going head-to-head tonight.
I would wonder if those 6 guys had made more than your entire payroll.
Yes, they absolutely did. For sure. I think our payroll the first year was maybe, I don't know how I'd find out, probably around $13 million.
I remember coming out of the lockout when it was ceiling was 39 and low end was 21. And I remember talking to David Poyle on the radio, and he said bluntly, I don't even know how I'm going to make 21. Never mind the ceiling. I don't know how I'm going to make $21 million payroll work here.
Yeah, absolutely. We scratched and clawed. I remember one year, just to make the floor, Steve Sullivan got hurt, and I think we signed Marty Jelena to one of those 35-plus contracts with ridiculous bonuses. And I think we were like $10 million under the floor just to make the floor. And but we were competitive. I remember the first year that the first year we came in, and next year we were picking like 7th or 8th. So there's some teams that shouldn't have been worse than us, but were. And then I remember the first playoff series against Detroit. I think it was year 5 that we made the playoffs, 5 or 6. Their payroll was 76 million. The Red Wings, and we were like, when we picked up a couple guys at the trade deadline, I think we were like 17.
Oh my goodness!
So and we went 6 games. They went on to win cups.
Yep.
Every time we played Detroit, they went on to win the cup. And we did that with Chicago for a couple of years, and when they were in their window, where we pushed them to the brink, and then they went on to win cups. So. We were for a few years there, but I said this from day one. The best development that we had during those years were the Detroit Red Wings and the Chicago Blackhawks, because they were the standard in the league, and we had to play them all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had to get better just to survive, to be competitive. And we did. And I thought the turning point for our franchise was in, I think it was 2004, when Paul Kariya said, I'm going to Nashville.
Mm-hmm.
He looked at the prospect pool. He looked at where we were going. He says, I'm going to Nashville. And I think Paul Kariya put Nashville on the map.
You know, I was going to, I mean, there's so many places we can go here, but 25 years later, give me a good expansion draft story about a player that maybe you guys thought about taking or you didn't take, or just an argument that you and David Poyle had about player to take or something like that.
It's funny. We'll go in my office after this. I have the original draft list in front of us, the paper that we wrote on of who we took. And what we did, and this is where we changed the rules a little bit. We took, if you look at our original expansion draft, we took like guys like Mike Richter and Ally Frady and all these unrestricted free agents, because you got draft picks. You got compensated that way. So we did that to get extra draft choices, and we didn't worry a whole lot about, there wasn't a lot of big player pools. But I do remember this. Our best deals were the deals that we made with teams for the protecting goalies. Example, LA wanted to protect the one of their goalies. So I kept going over to Europe and to all these tournaments. And the Finnish team had this little defenseman, Timonen. And I kept coming back going, David would ask me, who'd you really like? I said, there's this little defenseman. He's just tiny, but he's the best guy. I mean, he really is smart and he's efficient. And David said the best thing. He said, we're not going to be very good. Why not take a chance? And this is back when everybody, had to be 6'5", 6, be, physical, all that. He says, we're not going to be very good. We're not going to have a lot of skill. Why don't we take some chances? And, we took a chance on Timonen, and then you see Rafalski and guys like this start coming back into the fold, coming back from Europe. And we had Kimmo Timonen thrown into a deal. I was in Portland, Maine, and we used to play the Fredericton Canadians a whole lot. And Montreal wanted to protect a couple of their goalies, a couple of French goalies, and they had this Thomas Faucon. And we said, just get this guy thrown into a deal. And we think there's something there. Myself, Paul Gardner was a big proponent of that as well. And we got him thrown into a deal. One of our best players, and went over and saw a guy in Latvia named Carlos Scratchtich. And we signed him, and we brought, guys like that back from Europe and to give us some skill and that it worked out really well. But we made a trade for Cliff Ronning, who
I saw last
gave
night
us some skill. Yeah,
on Broadway. Yes.
Yeah, and it just slowly made us competitive. But that group of guys, and one of the best moves that I thought we ever made is one of my favorite. I always say one of my favorite captains was Tommy Fitzgerald, and we brought him in and to lead us. We were looking for a character guy to sort of create this franchise, and Fitzy came in. And the one thing that I remember, and this is the things that you go through. I remember one night we went into Philly, and they had the Legion of Doom there, and we lost like 10-2. It was not good. And I remember the bus Fitzy was really down. Like Fitzy was a third line, really character player, and he was down. He was trying to be a first line guy, with an expansion team. And I remember, he was really down. He was just taking it really hard. And I said, Fitzy, let's just stay back, let the bus go, and we'll come back and we'll have a beer and just chat about this whole situation. And we sat there and had a really good talk. And I think from that moment on, Fitzy took the captain's role in not trying to be someone he wasn't. He was just, I just needed Tom Fitzgerald to be Tom Fitzgerald, which was captain material. But he didn't have to be a first-line player. He just had to be Tom Fitzgerald. For us, he was a second-line guy, and play against the best guys and do all that. And from that point on, he was one of the best captains. I was in tears when we traded him to Chicago in the 1 year. I really was, because he had meant a lot to our franchise, keeping it afloat, and keeping we were a hardworking team. You were going to get, a scrappy bunch every night, and that was Tommy set the table.
Speaking of scrappy guys, and you've talked a lot about Scotty Walker, for example. One of the things that I don't think is lost on anybody who's followed the Nashville Predators from their inception is this team always carried a slugger.
Yeah.
From day one. One of my favorite things to mention to people about tough hockey players is I've never seen a tough player turn in what I consider to be a tough guy's perfect season, except for Darcy Hordichuk. There was 1 year I think it was 2008. Darcy Hordichuk had 60 penalty minutes, 12 fighting majors. There's not one minor penalty he took. Every minute.
You would know that.
It's one of my favorite. Listen, Barry's nodding.
I say that
he knows.
with a tip of the cap. Only you would know that.
60 minutes, 12 fighting majors. Yep. To me, it was like, from a tough guy's point of view, the perfect season. What did tough guys mean to this team and this organization?
Well, I think the one thing that Nashville, we never had, as an expansion team, we weren't gifted any skill.
Yeah.
We had to draft it, and we did such a good job. I mean, you look at the all-star team up front for Nashville, David Legone is probably still the number one center that we've drafted. And so this franchise was football country, NASCAR country. They loved, the physical part of this game, the speed of this game. Mm-hmm. And so we had some, the Cliff Ronings. I love the Cliffy was a little water bug. Scotty Walker could fly, but he had a little bit of grit and spit to him. Yeah. They loved we had the Patrick Cotes of the world, the Wade Belaks, the Jordan Tutus, the Darcy Hordichuks. What I thought was one of the best fourth lines back then, and that didn't get any credit, was Darcy Hordichuk, Scott Nickel, Jordan Tutu. There wasn't, like, Darcy's can fight the heavyweights, but he's not a 6'5" guy. And Scooter could get under anybody's skin. That's Scotty Nickel. And Toots, he brought an element that everybody knew who was on the ice. And pound for pound, they could drive teams crazy. And that was always appreciated in Nashville. The hard work part, I'll stand up for the team part. And that's been the staple of the success of Nashville. It is a very community team. It's a family team. It's a team. And they always played together. Because we never had, or I shouldn't say we never had, in the early years, we never had the game changer, the guy that could bring you out of your seats, do all that. We always had good goaltending. We always had structure, and we worked our tails off. And we played together, and we would commit together. And we were pain in the rear to play against, night in and night out. We were a team that we led the league in closed door meetings for the other team because they looked at our lineup and went, oh, this shouldn't be that hard. And we would feed them, and they would have a closed door meeting, and one of those things. So we led the league in closed door meetings.
That's a source of pride. I understand that because you drove people crazy. Now, I wanted to ask you about this job in particular. one thing about David Poile, he was always bold. Always bold. Like, he made trades that a lot of other general managers would be like, I don't know if I want my name on that one. This year at the deadline, you knew you were taking over the job. How involved were you?
Very involved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to be bold too, aren't you?
I think I'm going to be bold. The one thing that I think that's happened with me, I think I have a personality where I'm me.
Yeah.
But on the other side, I'm not afraid of. I think I'm hardened on the other side from the years of coaching. So I'm not scared of criticism. I'm not scared of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it's no different, and you could sort of see it a little bit in the press conference. I said to our scouts, we got 13 draft picks. Swing for the fences.
Mm-hmm.
I'll be more.
That quote got a lot of play. A lot of play.
Well, that's what I believe in. I want you to be convicted in what you're doing. Like, let's not be safe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if you're going to be safe, like if you just want to have basically to our scouts, and I said, if you just want to have a guy play in the league and have it, hey, he played in the league and that was a good draft. That's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for, you know what, this guy, we took a chance on this guy and this guy came through big time. And he's a game changer. Mm-hmm. I'd rather have that. That'll keep you on the staff for a long time than playing safe. Mm-hmm. I want you. You can play safe in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round. Let's play safe there. We can get character. We can get, physicality. We can get checkers. We can get that. But we can't get the goal scoring. We can't get the people that get people out of their seats in those rounds, unless you get really, really lucky.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we've had great success of getting a game-changing goalie really late in the draft in Pekka Rinne.
Yep.
There's a statue out there in the front of this building. We've got Patrick Hornquist, the last pick in the draft, who's had a great career. I mean, we've done some of that. We can get those guys. But the offensive skill, game-changing guys, you got to take your swings early. And I'm really bold on that. I'd rather you do that. Stick your neck out on the guy, show you're convicted. That's the way to go. There's no wrong. The wrong choice for me is not listening to your true beliefs.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to the draft, I mean, I understand the idea that we're looking for skill early and everything else later on. First of all, about this draft specifically, we always talk about tiers in the first round. How many do you see early?
Tiers?
Yeah.
I see probably, I think most teams, and I'm only going to speak for me listening to a couple different teams, but just, our own self. I think there's a front tier. There's I'm going to say probably like a 5 or 6 to 12, 13, and then there's another tier. And then there's a bigger tier and a bigger tier. So most teams put value on picks where they would take a player. So I think every team's doing that.
I'm always curious about teams trying to move up and how expensive it is. And I'm guessing it varies from draft to draft. It feels like this is an expensive draft to try to move up. Is that accurate?
It is. If you think about it, I always try to think about both sides. So if you're in the 1, 2, 3, 4 hole, I would just say those 4 players that everybody's bringing up, and I don't care what order, you could be sitting there and you cannot make a mistake.
Mm-hmm.
So you're in a very comfortable situation. And you could argue it could be 5 and 6 if you want for some teams. I said my job was to try to make those guys uncomfortable. I'd love to move up, but there is an expense to it, and you have to be very, very conscious of the price.
Barry, thanks so much for this. Much
always a
appreciated.
pleasure. I listen to you guys do such a great job. Trust me, I get a lot of my info from you guys.
Not a chance. Not a
we
chance.
have you fooled, Barry.
Hey, I just want to know how some of your, I know some of the times that you do your podcasts and what have you, and you're traveling. So I appreciate it. You guys are one of the best.